She's reminiscing actually at this point in her life, and she's going over all the things that have brought her to where she is. So her mother has set up some arranged marriages for her, so this is one of the ones in particular that comes to her house. So it's her mother, her, and the prospective suitor, and the prospective suitor's mother. So sit back and relax. I shall read. Dinesh was tall, muscular, suave, and sophisticated. A real Bollywood hero that made me believe for one brief moment that all my dreams might still come true. He was equal in size to Nick, but where my former lover had no charm whatsoever, this oversized brown version had ample to spare. I was smitten the second his large frame filled our door. I almost drooled chai out of the side of my mouth as I watched him texting on his BlackBerry throughout most of the evening. How did someone with such large and lovely hands work such a small device effortlessly? More importantly, how would those same beefy fingers feel against the delicate softness of my skin? I felt myself getting warm. His hands were like the giant paws of a manicured bear. Before long, I was fixated on them, thinking of nothing other than what they would feel like on my body and in my mouth. My mother could take care of all the details of our wedding. I was mentally having sex with him before the tea had gotten cold. Lena has a degree, my mother said proudly to Dinesh in the middle of my reverie. Dinesh's mother sat next to him and informed us that her son had graduated from Harvard and had taken a position in a prestigious law firm. You are doing the upper level job, na Dooney Jan? She cooed to her son. I pictured his fingers in my mouth as he deftly continued to type. Uh-huh, he said without looking up from his BlackBerry. He is driving the Porsche car, his mother continued to brag. Porsche, Dinesh corrected, as I fixated even more on his large hands. I imagined how his hand would look, like a visual piece of art, complementing his perfect body wrapped around what had to be the world's largest and loveliest penis. Lena also got a job, my mother said impatiently. Tell them about it, Lena. I only heard some of what my mother had said. I was too lost in the fantasy I had created in my brain and my obsession with his oversized hands that instead of saying what I wanted to say, I blurted out, job? Yes, I give lovely hand jobs. What did you say? Dinesh asked, looking up sharply. My skin was red hot. What had I said? I only knew that from the expression of horror on both mothers' faces, something had been lost in translation. Who want more chai? My mother asked, pulling me roughly into the kitchen. What you said in there? Hand job, nah? What is that? Like this? She asked as she motioned up and down with her hand on an invisible penis. I nodded, unable to get the image out of my brain and stop the vomit from pushing itself to the surface of my throat. Please don't do that, Mother, I begged her. Take this plate of samosas out there and shut your mouth, nah? I obeyed, but for the rest of the evening, any lascivious thoughts of Dinesh were erased by the mental image of my mother signaling how to do a hand job to me in the kitchen. Even when he smiled at me upon my return, I was too embarrassed to make eye contact with him. I was scared that if I looked at him, I might blurt out something even more inappropriate, and from the look on his mother's face, I could tell there was no turning back. Needless to say, a proposal never came from Dinesh's side of the family. There's no money back refund. Okay, so now the next scene I would like to read. It's a little bit longer, and it's the reason the book has its name, Sex in Samosas. So if you're eating a samosa right now, I strongly urge you to put it down. Okay? I do. All right. So Lena is in the kitchen with her husband Manny of 5 years, and she's been reminiscing for a while. She had her first Brazilian wax, which is a lovely little a couple of pages by itself. So she's sitting in the kitchen and they're having a snack of samosas. Manny licked chutney off his lips, and the sight of it made my mind race to the previous night. I couldn't get sex off my brain. As I watched him slurp the tamarind sauce from his fingers, I was suddenly struck by how awkwardly he maneuvered his own tongue. Was he bad at oral sex, or was it me? I enjoyed the sensation with Jonathan, and even thought I felt myself come close to orgasm with him once. Nick was proficient enough at intercourse, but oral sex always felt like it was something he did begrudgingly on me. I assumed if I got more proficient at oral sex on him, he would make more of an effort, but I never got past the fact that I could tell his heart wasn't in it, and as a result, I never enjoyed it with him. Manny always seemed to make a valiant effort. His heart was in it, no doubt, but his technique lacked precision. I felt like I knew what it would take to make it better, but I never told him because I was nervous that if I insisted he perform better, he would ask for the same in return from me, and I knew my own skills were sorely lacking. I looked down at the samosa on my plate. Triangle-shaped, just like the bald patch between my legs. I traced the outline of the pastry with my fingers. That kind of stroking would probably feel good around the outer edge of my labia, I thought. I fiddled with it, studying its shape and texture. Did you ever really look at a samosa before? I said to Manny, wondering if I was the only one who could see the similarity. These are good. You made them with your mother, right? They aren't the store-bought ones? Manny stuffed the remainder of one of his samosas into his mouth, coriander chutney dripping from his lips. Yeah, I made them. But what I'm saying is, look at it. Look at its shape. It's a triangle. It's a triangle shape. Yes, Manny said in a mocking tone, and the table is a round shape, and the door is a rectangle. I ignored his tone and broke the samosa in my hand, removing its potato and pea filling onto the plate in front of me, leaving only the shell of the hollow triangle exposed. I stared intently at it. The top of the triangle rose up like the crest of my vagina, where my clitoris was situated, and the soft folds of the pastry trailed down gently like the flaps of my labia. I cleared the plate of the contents and cradled the shell in my hands as Manny absently watched in silence. I picked up one of the larger peas and placed it at the top of the triangle, the hood of the samosa gently cradling it in position. This is me! I showed him the carved out samosa. I could see he was unable to follow my logic. This is like the shape of my vagina! I stared at him, waiting for some recognition in his eyes. Manny smirked and mindlessly grabbed more chutney. How could he not see it? I was so proud of myself for turning a samosa into a vagina, but somehow Manny didn't seem to share my enthusiasm. I wasn't expecting him to keep it under glass or display it in his office like a piece of art I had sculpted with my own two hands, but a little recognition would have been nice. Are you going to eat that? He stuffed his mouth with the second last piece on his plate. Can't you see it? I tucked the sides down more so that they resembled labia and pressed the bottom of the triangle up a bit so that the hollowed out hole was more obvious. I held up the pastry to my mouth, and when he still didn't respond, I tried to prompt him by sticking my tongue out and mimicking a licking motion. He watched my tongue dart in and out. I instantly had his full attention. Something Clarissa said at the party came back to me as I watched his expression intently. Men are very visual. Oh yeah, sure, I see it now, Manny smiled broadly, especially when you stick your tongue out like that. Do you really, or are you mocking me? No, I really see it, Lee. He leaned forward, shoving his plate of food away. Rejecting his last piece of food? You must be serious. Do that again. No, I feel like a fool. Come on, show me how it's done. There was something playful but mocking about his tone. I realized I actually had a chance to tell him exactly what I thought I would like. I just had to find the nerve. I looked at the hollowed out pastry in my hand. I had already made a fool of myself by likening a samosa to my vagina, so how much worse was I going to make it if I started to mimic oral sex on it? I watched the Adam's apple in Manny's throat go up and down, his smile suspended, almost fixed in a quiet state of disbelief. I couldn't remember the last time I had his attention so fully. What the heck? My dignity was already gone. I had nothing to lose. I lifted the empty samosa up to my mouth and blew on it gently to remove the excess flaky pastry from the sides. From Manny's expression, he thought I had already begun to make love to it. So I began to blow around the outside edge again, feeling the heat from my mouth emanating out. It should be gentle at first, I said, blowing warm air on the rim and at the little green pea peeking out at the top. I wasn't sure he could even hear me. My voice was barely above a whisper. Nothing too shocking at first. The floor vibrated from Manny's legs shaking under the table. It's nice to have small little licks here on the side, I said as I flicked my tongue over the edge of the pastry. That always feels nice. And then maybe the tongue comes up here slowly, I said as I mimicked the words and gently opened my mouth to where the little green pea was waiting at the top of the triangle. I looked over at Manny's expression, the sun almost completely gone, his face hidden in shadows. I couldn't read him fully, but from what I could see of his face, I knew that he was engrossed, his smile replaced by the gape of his open mouth. I turned back to the samosa in my hand, the light glistening off my saliva. I noticed the pea was about to slide out of place, so I put my finger inside the hollow and pushed gently up towards it, rolling it into the position at the crest. I lifted my finger to my mouth and moistened it, rubbing the wet tip against the pea so that it sealed itself firmly in place. I played with the little green ball, twirling and rotating it gently under my dewy finger until it glistened like a jeweled emerald. No longer aware of Manny's presence, I continued to finger the pea in place, attempting to secure it at the top. I intermittently darted my tongue around the top edge of the pastry to moisten it, hoping it would adhere the green sphere to the top of the triangle. I started to lick more vigorously, the saliva in my mouth increasing with each stroke, the pea securing itself neatly in place. I opened my mouth wide to allow my tongue to protrude forward and darted it steadily in and out of the center of the triangle in an effort to keep the hollow open. I could taste the remnants of flour and butter at the edges, triggering a different type of reaction from my taste buds. I was hungry. I sucked at the little green pea, tasting its salty residue, gently nibbling at the crispy hood atop it. A low moan escaped my throat as the pea wobbled at the crest. It started to sink towards the back of the triangle. I groaned, fearful I would lose it and not to get enjoy at least some of my snack. My tongue flicked wildly at it, trying to cajole it back to the front. Several seconds later, it was back where I had placed it, ready to be devoured. I lifted my head up and surveyed the moist pastry in my hand. The pea was practically glowing at the top of the samosa. The sides of the pastry were limp and damp from my saliva. I looked over at Manny. His eyes were glassy, his mouth wide open. Both of his legs were shaking heavily. I sat back in my chair, placing the glistening pastry on the plate in front of me. I wanted to eat it until it dawned on me that I had just performed cunnilingus on a samosa. I suddenly wasn't sure if I should consume it or buy it a drink.